Hey guys, it's Kate and I hope you're having a great day. I'm here with my Mozart Kohlrabi palette, a piece of watercolor paper, and my little sauce cup that I use to mix my colors with this palette. And I'm going to do a very soft background. Now, I don't have my paper taped down this time, so I'm going to actually keep it fairly far away from the edges of the paper. And if you do get any paper buckling, sometimes it helps to get the back of the paper wet as well. It helps it kind of lay flat again. But I'm just going to go in wet over dry and make a really nice soft background. And I'm also going to use some of my metallics today. So I'm going to dip first into my Payne's Gray, and I'm just going to get a little bit on my brush. I want this to be a really soft background, and I'm going to kind of scatter this color around, but I want to work with a nice wet brush. I'm really kind of getting that water out onto the paper here, and I'm going to go into a few different colors, and I think blues sound really good to me today. So I went into my turquoise, and I'm going to let this kind of flow out a bit. I want to get some nice soft cloudy edges with some color transitions here. And so I'm just going over my shapes, dipping in water as I need to and blotting my brush, and I'm just sort of dragging this out and letting it kind of flow away to nothing. I don't want a lot of hard edges toward the edge of my paper, so I'm really going to be conscious of that and really work very light and very loose. So I'm going to drop some more color up here because I can always add more color, and you can take it away too. I mean, it's not like once you have it down, it's down forever. But don't want to sound too dramatic about that. All right, I'm going into the deep blue, and I'm putting a little bit of that down in a couple of spots here. I'm getting some of that color onto the moist paper so that it can spread out just a little bit. And then I'm going to dip back into that Payne's Gray. And again, I'm just putting the very tip of my brush in there. And I'm going to add some more of that Payne's Gray up in this area and over to the side here. I'm leaving some white spaces in here, but I am mostly covering the paper. And then I'm just dragging my brush and letting it flow out toward the edges for a nice soft edge. So I'm going to add a little bit of warmth in here now. I'm going to go into this brilliant yellow. And it's pretty bright, but I am mixing it a little bit in with this green that I've got, or sorry, the blue that I've got in my cup. So it's going to make a little bit of a green color. I'm going to add a little bit of this in a few spots as well. And I'm getting my brush just a little bit wet at the end and dropping this in. And it's adding just a little bit of brightness and warmth, a little bit of greenery, and it's still staying very light. I actually really love this color blend right here. It's really pretty to me. All right, I'm going to dip my brush again into water and give it a good blot and soften around this edge again. And add a little bit more of that yellow up here to the corner. I love how this looks. All right, going back into that turquoise, let's see what we get here. I'm going to add just a little bit more. I'm keeping in the same colors and just slowly building up. I'm going to zoom in a little bit so you can see a little bit better what I'm doing here. So I'm just dropping my brush on, and I'm actually kind of going for some of these areas where I've got dark against light, and I'm just sort of enhancing that color shift a little bit. And I'm just blotting just a little bit at a time and going along with this background. But I really want the vast majority to be soft colors. And actually this is a little bit too jarring. So I rinsed my brush in water and I'm just giving that a little bit of a drag so the edge isn't quite so hard. Now some spots it's still pretty moist, so it's spreading out a little bit more. But anywhere where it's just kind of staying put, I'm doing a little bit of a drag with a damp brush. And we're starting to develop some pretty good texture in here. So I am going to go back into my Payne's Gray and bring some of that back in, and I'm just adding it to the same mixing bowl, but it's kind of graying out that color a bit, and I'm going to go back in around where that Payne's Gray was and just add a little bit more darkness. And again, I'm just going through, I'm going to drag it out a bit to soften that edge and let it flow out a bit on these edges, and taking my time with them and softening up wherever I see I want to soften it. I like having that little bit of a mixture of soft and hard edges, and it's almost it almost kind of reminds me of when you're looking at like those slices of gemstones like amethyst and things like that, and you can see these edges that are very dark and rough, and then you have all of this sort of shiny stone that has almost like rainbows in them, and it's really beautiful. And hopefully you can see all the color on this. It's just really gorgeous and soft. Okay, we are all dry on our background, and I have brought out my set of brush markers. These are alcohol markers, and if you have them or if you want to try them, you can go along with me. Just make sure that your paper is on a background that you don't care about, because it could bleed through your paper depending on how thick it is. But these alcohol markers I thought would be fun to draw and color on top of this really faint background. So that is what I'm going to do today, and I'm going to start with very light colors and work my way darker. So I have this little test sheet of paper so I can try out my colors and just see how they look on the paper before I actually use them. And this one is a little bit darker than I want, even though it is pretty light. And I'm going to just try a couple colors here because I want a very, very light green. And I'm going to start with this cool gray. And I'm going to put just a very light color in the background. And I'm going to do some simple little leaf shapes. Actually, what I'm going to do is just kind of come down, and they're going to be almost like fading into the background. And so we've got these couple of very light leaves, and I'm going to leave those there for right now. And I want to get that nice turquoise color that we had pulled out, and I'm going to do 3 little containers for flowers down here at the bottom. So I'm going to go right over these background leaves and background colors, and I'm going to start first with an angular, kind of tall vase, just like that. And I'm going to start coloring it in a bit. I'm going to do this purple. And I'm going to do a little circle or oval container, just like that. And then one more, I'm going to do kind of a fun shape I'm going to have it come up a little bit higher so that we have 3 different levels. And that works well for me. All right. I'm going to come in here and do a couple of flower stems now. I'll do this one in here. I'll do this one right here. And I'll do a third green right here. Now I'm going to go back to that cool gray because this little vase here really covered that up. So I'm going to just come in here and do another one and have it kind of coming up the center. I'm going to go for the medium pink first and make a couple of little rings. This flower I'm going to make blue. And these are just very simple shapes. There's nothing to them at all. It's just having some fun, and we're going to do some more doodles on these to add some texture. So this is just sort of the base that we're going to add some pattern to. And it's just, each one's a little bit different than the other. I grabbed a purple that I'm going to add last, and I just need to put in a flower shape here. So I'm going to do a circle here, and I'm going to add in these petals, just like that. Then I'm going to color them in and do something different with the center. On this flower here, I'm going to do orange on these empty rows. It's kind of like a fun peachy orange color. And then a little gray center. For this one, I'm going to add a yellow center to keep it bright. And then I might add a little bit more to the background here. So this is kind of a really nice light peachy color. I'm going to add a few little illustration, sort of blobby shapes, and they're just going to be kind of in the background. They're not going to take over anything, but it's just going to add another little layer of interest to the page. And it's pretty light, so it's going to just kind of blend in like those gray leaves. And on some of these, I'm just going to have it peek out from behind these little vases and maybe peek out from the bottom a bit, just like that. It's going to be a little bit of a pattern. Okay, I've got my markers put away, and I am going to work now with my pens and get some nice patterns here. So I'm actually going to zoom in a bit so you can see more closely what I'm doing. And you can see a couple of different layers of marks here. So I'm going to start first with that orange that I put on, and I'm going to loosely follow the outline between my little petals. And then I'm going to do the same thing on this inner ring. And this is where we can have a lot of fun with our patterns and marks. So on this one, I'm just going to put some little hash marks here all the way around so that we can add a bit of a pattern on the circular shape and also kind of highlight that difference in color a little bit more, since we have a couple of layers of color on this little doodle flower. And I like that so far. I'm going to revisit that probably, but I'm going to move on for now. And I think I want to move on down to this vase with the white. And I want to make kind of a fun pattern on this because the vase is such a fun shape. And so I'm going to do these little dots in a ring around it. And I think I want to do that around some of these centers. Just like this. And then I'm going to add some little lines below each row, and then I think maybe a larger white circle in the centers. And what's nice is I have this highlight already kind of built in, so it just sort of goes right over it and blends in. I'm gonna add a few little V shapes, and I'm just sort of adding little by little and seeing how I like it. And I think that's really pretty. So what I'm going to do now is add a few little sort of S shapes next to each circle, just like that. And I think we can call that one good. So I'm going to move on next to this vase here, and I'm going to do some stripe lines across it that kind of follow the contour a little bit, matching the bottom. And I'm going to do some little dashes here. And the nice thing is you can just really relax with these patterns. I mean, such simple little shapes and marks, but then once you really start to look at it, it all just comes together. I mean, anybody can do these paintings and doodles, and they end up just looking so cute. So I'm going in with a row of colored in circles here. And I think we can call that one good too. This one I'm going to turn a little bit so I can doodle, and I'm going to try doing some spirals. And I'm just going to have them grouped together, and I'm going to cover the whole vase in this spiral pattern. And where they come next to each other, I'm just sort of terminating the line and then making some imaginary lines around it so that all of the border areas are filled in. So like right here, I'm not going to start a new spiral. I'm just going to bring an extra loop around as if it's going around behind the other ones. And then I'm going to do the same thing down here. So as I get close to the edges, I'm just going to keep on adding those marks. So now we have 3 really cute vases, and we can move back up into our flowers. So first I'm going to do some white in the center of this flower and just do a simple dot pattern, just like that. And then kind of think about how I want these outer petals to look. So first I'm going to do an easy outline of each petal, and then just sort of take it slowly and see how I like each thing that I add. So we've got a simple outline now, and that adds kind of a fun highlight, especially since it's not perfect. Maybe on this one, I can add a single stripe down the center of each petal. We can see how we like that. And I think that still looks pretty. So maybe add a couple on either side, halfway out. And I think that looks like a nice little petal. So I'm going to do that all the way around. And that's nice and simple, and just add some brightness to that little flower there. So I think that is going to be called done. Now this one's kind of a tricky one because we've got these little scalloped edges on top, but I think what we can do is just have each of these scallops come down. Just like that. So now we have our beginning of the pattern. And I'm going to add one more loop to the center of each one, like that. Now this is kind of a lot of lines, so I think I might try coloring in those loops and seeing how I like that. So then you have kind of a nice contrast that way, because you can still see the blue, but there's a little bit more detail in here now, a little bit more contrast and a shape that you can pick out really easily with your eyes. And you still have that dark and light there, so it doesn't fade to the background. And I think this looks really good for our little flower doodles. I'm going to put my white pen aside, and I'm going to grab my gray fine liner, and this is the 0.1 tip, and so it's very fine, and I am going to add some simple patterns to my leaves, but I don't want them to steal the show. I really want to focus on our little vases and our flower heads. So I'm just going to have kind of a low contrast here, and then add some simple little patterns to the leaves. Now for this, I still have this little scalloped edge, and I'm going to follow the outline of these marks, just like that. Now, I'm going to add a little hash mark to these, and it's going to be kind of light and just add a bit more texture, but it's not going to stand out quite as much as the white on the darker colors. I think that looks pretty good to me. And then lastly, we have our leaves right here, and I am going to trace the sides, and this is kind of that flower cup. I'm going to add some lines coming down to kind of show it holding the flower a bit, and then on each of these I think I'm going to just continue that spiral, and it'll just have that really cute whimsical look, just like that. And I think we have ourselves a finished doodle, and this one was a lot of fun. I'm going to zoom out a bit so you can see the whole thing, just like that, and then I'm going to lift it up so you can see the close-up of the finished piece. You can see all the little patterns and marks, and this is just so easy to do. You just sit down, you fill it in with some marks, and just try to make some different ones, a little bit of variety, see how many different leaf shapes you can make, how many different vase shapes or flower shapes, and you can get yourself a nice pretty little page. So I hope you enjoyed this video today. If you did, make sure to give it a thumbs up. If you want to see more like this, make sure to subscribe. Feedback is always appreciated, so leave a comment down below. And until next time, keep creating.